I apologize. I am on my phone, so hopefully everybody can hear me. My computer just started doing an update as soon as we started today. My name is Lisa Happ. I'm a certified divorce coach, narcissistic abuse recovery coach, grief coach, somatic coach, and a former therapist. I got divorced, gosh, about 15 years ago, and then found myself in a relationship with an abusive narcissist. And during that time, my son also passed away. So I have taken all of my life experience and education, and I work to help people going through the most difficult times of their life find some peace, find a way through the most difficult times of their life. Today, we're talking about all the emotional parts of divorce and how to regulate during that process. It's so important to be able to regulate your emotions. Not easy, but important during a divorce process. Without that emotional regulation, it can cost you so much time, so much energy, so much money, and can also really affect your ability to make decisions that are best for you and your family. One of the biggest things I hear from my clients when I first start working with them is that their brain is in a fog. They don't know what's wrong with them. They're so overwhelmed and they can't think straight. One of the first things they always say to me is, "What's wrong with me?" There's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with any of you. It is completely normal. I remember feeling the same way, completely exhausted and overwhelmed and not having any idea of what to do or where to turn. And when we get into that place of exhaustion and overwhelm, our nervous system goes haywire. It goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I'm sure everyone here can relate to that feeling. So, what I like to do when we start all of our Vesta Hub meetings is bring everyone in to regulate their nervous system before we get started. We thank you all for being here. We're honored you took the time because I know as a mom and a busy entrepreneur, mom that works more than full time, like everybody on here, it's really hard to get on these calls. And I'm sure you had to race home from work or feed your kids and all the things before you got on here. So let's just give everybody a minute to breathe and ground. And none, we can't see any of you on a screen. So if you're comfortable, let's have everyone just close their eyes. And again, we cannot see you. So you don't look weird on the screen and we have no idea if your eyes are closed or not. And with those eyes closed and heavy, just start to allow yourself to take really deep inhales and really deep exhales. Just even giving yourself a moment, maybe the first time all day, to allow yourself to breathe. Letting your feet get heavy on the floor, letting your body feel nice and heavy and connected to the surface underneath you and behind you if you're sitting in a chair. Letting the lungs really fill all the way up as much as is comfortable and letting all of the air start to exhale out. And just staying with that breath a few times. Just noticing whatever you're noticing in your body as you start to take those deep inhales and exhales. Maybe your breath is holding somewhere. Maybe you're feeling a little tightness or tension in your body. Just notice it and recognize it, but not think too much about it. You're going to change your breath just a little bit, just to show your nervous system that it's safe right now. So we're going to begin to inhale for a count of 5, hold for a count of 2, and then exhale for a big count of 8. And just continue to let your breath flow just like that a few more times. Just noticing whatever you notice in your body. Maybe starting to notice how your body and your mind feel a little different than they did when you hit start on Zoom a few minutes ago. And let's just let yourself be present for a minute. Maybe noticing the temperature of the room, maybe any sounds you hear other than my voice. And then every single time you all ask yourself a question, really listening into yourself. And maybe ask yourself, what do I need right now for myself in this moment to feel okay, to feel supported? It can be something simple, like you just need a glass of water, you need to make tea, or it can be something way more, just getting yourself a minute to sit and listen into yourself. And after you've taken some notice of that and your answer to yourself, just start to let the breath get nice and deep again. Maybe bringing a little movement to your body, starting to move your hands a little, your feet a little, maybe moving your head side to side. And then slowly, just allow yourself to open your eyes and come back to the room, maybe giving your nervous system a minute to reacclimate to the here and the now. And I'm going to start to talk to you a little bit while you're reacclimating about emotional regulation in divorce and really in life as a whole. When our nervous system is dysregulated, one of the things that you'll start to notice is that everything feels incredibly urgent. Everything feels like it needs to be done. And in divorce, especially, this is where mistakes can happen. This is where you feel like you need to respond to every email immediately from your ex or even your attorney, and you need to make really quick decisions. So, this sense of urgency, although sometimes it can help us in life, it's not the most helpful when going through a divorce. It leads to emails you regret. It really leads to really long calls that are really expensive with your attorney, blowing your attorney's inbox up at 2 because you just got in an argument with your ex. And these things all cause so much emotional labor and all a huge increase in attorney's fees. Most people don't even realize how much they're using their attorney through the divorce process to regulate their emotions as their therapist, as their coach. And your attorney is not always the best person to offer this. They're great for strategy, they're great for legal advice, but they're not always the person to offer you this. So before you get on a call with your attorney, or before you even sit down to write an email, I really encourage my clients to go right into those 5 to 8 breaths I just showed you. You can do it anytime, anywhere, and nobody even asks to know that you're doing it. Even before you send your ex a text, an email, that is a great way to quickly show your body that it's safe in that moment and that you are okay. One thing that is so important and so simple and so hard to remember is always give yourself space to breathe, just like in those 5 to 8 breaths I just explained. If you can stop for even a moment in the day, and maybe the first second you open your eyes in the morning, just giving yourself a chance to take a breath before you jump out of bed, before you go make coffee, before you grab your phone. And throughout your day, even if you need to set a reminder in your phone to do, give yourself little breath breaks throughout the day because life is overwhelming. Divorce is exhausting. Single parenting is exhausting. Just giving yourself those small moments, if that's all you can find in the day to breathe, is going to make such a huge difference. And another way to really regulate your nervous system is saying no. People are asking us all the time to do more at work, to do more for our family, friends asking for favors. And when you're going through divorce, your cup is typically pretty empty. You're exhausted. You're probably in a place where you need to be on a receiving end more than a giving end. So if you're someone that is terrible at saying no, I absolutely know that I have that same problem sometimes. So if you cannot say no when somebody asks you for a favor, maybe stopping and just taking a quick little pause before you say yes and asking yourself, if I say yes to this person and agree to this project at work, agree to help my friend move, agree to babysit my friend's kids, whatever it is, if I say yes to this person right now, what am I saying no to for myself? Because we all only have so much time. Time is such a commodity. And if you're giving to somebody else, does that mean you're taking something away from yourself? Maybe something that you really need. And one thing people often tell me when I'm on calls with the new clients is that they don't know how to trust themselves anymore. They regret getting into this marriage. Maybe they're in a marriage where there's coercive control and they wish they had left sooner. Maybe they made some mistakes or feel they've made some mistakes along the way and they really don't trust themselves. And so, one way to begin to emotionally regulate is to begin to really trust yourself. And it's a weird thing to say and a weird thing to describe. But one of the best ways you can learn to trust yourself is to show yourself that you can trust yourself and that you can show up for yourself. So, if you say to yourself, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and go for a walk, get up tomorrow morning and go for a walk. If you promise yourself you're going to go to a yoga class this Sunday, go to yoga class on Sunday. In our subconscious, our internal wiring, our heart, really begins to trust ourselves if we begin to do what we say we're going to do for ourselves. Just like you would earn trust in another person, a friend, a family member, if they showed up for you and stood by their word and did what they said they were going to do. Doing that for yourself helps you to gain so much trust in yourself. Another way that's really helpful is to not force positivity. I think we live in a society with so many Instagram reels and so many posts on Instagram, especially this time of year, talking about being happy and talking about being grateful and talking about being positive. But when you're going through anything, whether it's divorce, grief, life, that's really a form of spiritual bypassing where you're just pushing everything down, shoving the emotions down, and pretending everything is okay. And honestly, sometimes life is not okay. Sometimes things suck. And it's okay in that moment to tell yourself, this isn't great. This really sucks. This is really hard. And just to allow yourself to be in that space. I know I found when I was going through my divorce and it was so difficult at times, I used to just tell myself, this is just a phase. This is just a phase of my life. So anyone that has children, every stage, like when your children are babies and they don't sleep and they're up all night, just and then you look back and you remember it fondly. And then there's another stage and another stage. This is just the same. This is just a stage in your life. It's gonna get better. It's gonna pass. And you're gonna look back on it someday and remember how hard it was, but also maybe even have some good memories about it too. Maybe it's the friendships you made, maybe it's the strength that you gained through it all, new experiences you had. And it may be hard to see that right now, but I promise that day will come. And going back to the forced positivity, when you have a really difficult emotion, when you're mad, when you're sad, when you're angry, just allowing yourself to feel it and recognize it and validate it for yourself because there's a lot of things in divorce that are going to make you angry, mad, and sad. And if you can even take a minute to close your eyes when you're having those emotions and really lean into it, take a few deep breaths and notice where you feel it in your body. If you feel it in your chest, for instance, sit for a minute with that feeling in your chest and just let it be there. Notice it, see what exactly it feels like, how strong that sensation is, and just allowing it some space to sit instead of pushing it away. That is something that will really allow your nervous system to safely regulate that emotion through your body. One more suggestion that's really helpful is boundaries. And I know everyone talks about boundaries. I don't even know if any of us truly even exactly know what that means. When you're going through a divorce and people want to ask you about your divorce, and you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it. You can say you're not interested in talking about that right now. I'm really tired. I prefer not to tell you about that. You can change the subject. One thing I find works really well when people start to ask, especially with the holidays coming up. I feel like everyone's going to have to ask about this at Christmas. Just say, I'm working through it. I'm not really interested in talking about it. If anything changes, I will let you know. That phrase, if anything, just I will let you know, really just shuts down the but and why questions that come when you try to set a boundary with some people. And another, this is along the line of boundaries, paying attention to who you feel really good around, who your nervous system feels good around, who you feel calm and regulated and happy around, and spend more time with those people. And then you'll also maybe start to notice the people that really stress you out, the people you can feel your nervous system just amping up when you're around them. It's okay not to spend time with those people or really limit the time if you can't avoid them altogether. While you're going through this time, you're sensitive, your nervous system is sensitive. And so you can really regulate your nervous system by regulating who you spend your time with and when you spend your time with them. And another way to control your stress and your emotion through the divorce is to work with the right team. And a right team is different for every single person. Is the person you sit with or you sit on a call with and you immediately feel like they get me. You immediately feel an exhale. You feel like I am going to be okay. Those are the people that work for you and that work for your nervous system. And those are the people that are going to help you get through your divorce. And with saying that, I am going to bring in Jolie, who is our attorney in our group. Jolie and I work together endlessly, pretty much daily with clients as a team, helping them move through the divorce. Julie and I are both a little bit on the woo-woo side, both into nervous system healing. So Julie wants to come on now. We can talk to you a little bit about how we work together, help clients get through the divorce process peacefully, happily, and as regulated as possible.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lisa. And I just want to echo before I start talking Mandy's little disclaimer at the beginning that I am licensed in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So if you're listening tonight and you reside in another state, I'm going to be talking really high level tonight, but you'll want to be sure to talk with somebody who is licensed in your jurisdiction because divorce laws do vary by state. Okay, so now that's out of the way, I just wanted to start with tonight a simple statistic. According to experts, divorce ranks as a whopping number 2 on the list of the top 10 most stressful life events. And this is even higher than imprisonment, death of a close family member, and personal injury or illness. And so that is a pretty staggering statistic. And as Lisa said, if you're feeling overwhelmed and destabilized right now, that is completely normal because divorce touches every aspect of a person's life, even your own personal sense of identity, your money, housing, your kids, all of your most important things that divorce will have an effect on. And I've been an attorney for 13 years, and I've never personally been divorced myself. However, several years ago, I helped my brother get through his own divorce with my former sister in law. And that experience allowed me to glimpse the emotional aspect of the divorce process through my client's eyes for the first time. And it still has ripple effects today as my own kids grapple with their aunt's absence at family holidays and their milestone events. So the divorce touches, like I said, the people who are getting divorced, family members, everybody. And I love working and partnering with Lisa so much when I'm working with my clients because she helps to keep them grounded and she allows me to do my work as an attorney efficiently and without the distractions that can come with all of the emotional overwhelm. Some examples of the way that Lisa and I work together are we have gotten on Zoom calls together with our clients and we've role played what it's going to be like in a deposition, or if we're preparing for trial, what it's like to be cross examined by a hostile attorney. So we've done that together. Lisa has even attended court hearings with me and our joint clients to help them stay regulated and focused while we're waiting. And there's a lot of court waiting time. So she's been there as a cheerleader and as a support system. She also helps so much when clients are being bombarded with communications from their ex. She can help them craft those responses to them and really helps take that fight or flight in the moment when you're receiving those messages. Another way that Lisa helps me out a ton is if I need to tell, and this happens, sometimes we get some disappointing court orders and I need to convey that information to the client. So I'll talk to Lisa and we'll figure out like what's the best way to present this to the client, what is our next strategy going to be to help them digest that information, be able to process it and move forward. And she also helps me out a lot when I need to tell my clients advice that they don't want to hear, but they need to hear. And as an attorney, you don't want to be spending your time and money having me explain things to you multiple times. You'd rather be able to process that information with somebody like Lisa who can help you get through the emotions of it because this is really heavy stuff. And I'm just so extremely grateful for our collaboration. And Lisa and I love working together so much that we decided to start a podcast together. It's called Divorce Detox. You can find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'll put the link in the chat in a little bit. And we have a treasure trove of over 80 episodes that you can go back and listen to. And we're still recording and putting out new episodes. But we talk about the legal aspects of divorce, holistic alternatives. We just had one about pet custody the other day. Like, we really have episodes about so much. So be sure to check that out. Do you want to add anything else about how we work together, Lisa?
Let me think. You said so many amazing things. I guess the thing I would say that just popped into my head, and I think we were talking about this when we were all on a call the other night, is when you work with an attorney or anybody on your legal team and they are very regulated themselves, if their nervous system is regulated, you are going to be able to feel it. And that's one thing I love about Jolie. No matter how stressful our days are, if we're in court, if we're creating some sort of strategy, we have 40 calls going at one time, 40 like 40 things happening at once. Her nervous system is always so regulated. And if your attorney is not regulated, your case is not regulated. So you always want to make sure somebody is regulated in their own head, in their own life. And we all have stressful days, but that is one of my there's so many things I love working with Jolie. She's so compassionate, she's so kind, and she's amazing with strategy. She understands coercive control, but no matter what, she always comes into a call or to court regulated and just there for her client.
Thank you. I'm glad that it looks that way, Lisa. Well, you never really knew what's going on underneath the surface, but I'm so glad it appears that way.
It does.
Good. And so I just thought it would be helpful too to talk a little bit about the way that family court addresses certain issues because one thing that I think clients struggle with and with the emotional part of divorce is sometimes they don't have realistic expectations of what they can expect if they're going to litigate something in the court system because they're hearing all of these stories from their cousin who got divorced or their neighbor, and they're hearing all of this chatter. And divorce is so fact specific that you really can't make comparisons across the board. And so the family court and judges do not view cases in an emotional way as the parties are experiencing them in their life. They have a very rigid framework that's governed by statutes and case precedents that they operate from. And this can be described as cold and unfair. And in some cases, it is. They are not perfect. I will be the first to admit. But it is this inherently flawed system that we as attorneys have to operate in unless the parties agree to opt out and do some kind of out of court resolution process like mediation, which Marty's going to talk about soon. Otherwise, we're stuck with this court system. And within this framework, things like infidelity, which are really emotionally charged for individual parties, this is unlikely to influence things like the division of assets in a divorce case unless like large amounts of marital funds were dissipated on that extramarital affair. The family court also doesn't reward parties for pain and suffering. So it's not a place where you can go to have like your wrongs righted. There's really no justice in the family court system. It doesn't operate to make either party whole or like how they existed before the marriage, before you even got married. So parties who are emotionally driven by wanting to punish their ex or financially devastate them, they're setting themselves up for a lengthy, costly battle, which will ultimately fail. Because in Massachusetts, at least, the goal with property division is equitable distribution, which means a fair division of the marital estate and the debts. How the court looks at this, they look at property division like the divorce is a business venture that's being dissolved. Like I said, they take all of the emotion out of it. And sometimes I think it can be helpful for my clients to view the property division this way. So all of the assets and debts of the marital enterprise, which is the business, they need to be divided between the parties. And unfortunately, in most cases that are filed as a no-fault divorce, like bad conduct of one of the parties, even if it leads to the dissolution of the marriage, is generally not very persuasive and isn't going to have a large effect on the property division. Is that something that you tend to deal with your clients, Lisa, talking to them about?
Yes, absolutely, because property is property and emotion is emotion. And in my space, I primarily work in coercive control cases where mostly all of my clients are experiencing complex PTSD symptoms. They're angry. They want to be heard. They want to know it mattered. They want the judge and like the attorneys to know how bad they were hurt and to understand. And I completely get all of that. They want justice. They're finally speaking out. They're finally speaking their truth and telling people about the abuse and the life that they've encountered with this partner. And they want somebody to ultimately care. And your attorney may care if you have a good attorney. Hopefully, coaches, therapists, they are there to help you with that. But a judge is not going to give you that. The court system, I work all over the world. The courts are not set up, they don't have a process for that in the family law courts. And that can be very sad and very disheartening when you finally stood up and asked for help and are getting out and you feel like day after day you're going through the court process and you're not getting that validation from the court system or from your judge. And it's sad. And I wish it was different. And I really hope we're all working hard to hopefully that someday it will be different. But I like to tell clients that from the beginning. We care, I believe you, and I'm going to help you through every step of this, but the court is just not set up that way.
And I will agree with my clients to the cows come home. I'll be like, "Yeah, he's a jerk. She's a monster." Like, we're all on the same page. He or she sucks.
Mm,
Even though we can vent about them and be on the same page about that, we still need to deal with what we're working within in the family court system. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is because perhaps the most emotional component of divorce revolves around the issues affecting children, including custody and parenting time. And as a parent of two young kids myself, I completely empathize with these feelings. Since our kids can't physically be split in two in most cases, unless there's evidence of abuse, neglect, or significant mental health issues or substance abuse, it is inevitable that you are probably going to lose time with your children than if you were to remain in an intact marriage. And there is certainly a grieving process acknowledging that reality. And I'm just telling you that you don't want to spend your time and money to navigate those very valid feelings with someone like me, who is number one, too expensive, and number two, not qualified to do that. You will be so much better off discussing these issues with someone like Lisa or a therapist or a counselor, because this is something that I can't fix, the judge can't fix. It's just a reality of what happens in divorce. And it's sad and it sucks, but there's so many ways. I know Lisa and I on our podcast, we've had episodes I'm thinking about like really making the most of your time that you have with your kids, new traditions that you can set up. And I guess that's a good segue to just what I wanted to end on. And before we pass it over to Marty, is that there really is power in having a positive mindset, not toxic positivity like Lisa was talking about before, but like just having not staying in a victim mentality or a place where you're just self-loathing or woe is me all the time, but having a positive outlook that things are going to get better. Even in the most high conflict litigious cases that I've been involved with, I've seen remarkable turnarounds and settlements happen once either my client or the opposing party can operate from a place of objectivity, compromise, and reasonableness instead of letting emotions hijack the process. And with that, I think we need to bring Marty on because she's the queen of nervous system regulation.
Okay, I'll unmute. Thank you. Thank you, Jolie. And thank you, Lisa. I don't know if I'm queen, but it's definitely, I do center all of the work that I do around that. And I spent most of my career working in high conflict cases. Most of my litigation was done around the issue of domestic violence. So I very much understand these types of cases and the detriment that the emotions have on the process, and everything that you guys just both talked about is the reason that I am not litigating anymore. Number one, I had to regulate my own nervous system. What I realized last year when I left my last job working for the last domestic violence program I worked for is that I was holding 20 plus years of other people's emotions in my body. And that took a real toll on me. And so I spent a significant amount of time doing my own work to regulate my body. And I realized that if I can offer a different way for people to divorce that does not center around the court, it is going to be so much better in the long run. And what I will say is it's not necessarily easier because you still have to deal with all of the same emotions, the heartbreak, the upset, the anger, the grief, the uncertainty that we do through the court system, because we are still uncoupling and we're separating families, we're separating assets. All of the things are still part of this process, but you have more control over it because you're not giving your decision making over to a judge at the end of the day. So, with that being said, I've had so many people say we can't use mediation because we're not amicable or there's power imbalances. And there are certain cases that mediation may not be appropriate for. But for me, I really do it from a place to hold space for all of the emotions. I really center that and I set folks up to understand that while we're going to talk about the paperwork, we're going to understand what your rights are, we're going to explain the process, you're going to walk away with an agreement that's going to be filed with the court. We have to go through the emotional process. What I found in this work is if we don't do that, then we'll get an agreement and you'll file it. And chances are either myself or maybe they'll come to you, Jolie, either for litigation or have to mediate again because they didn't really experience the emotions that are naturally going to happen. And they may have signed or created an agreement that doesn't hold the test of time. So, my goal is to really work with folks on nervous system regulation. And I will do things. We will breathe together. We will do techniques in a group setting. I think Lisa said this. If she didn't, I'll say it again. The strongest nervous system in the room is the nervous system that is going to control. And so my goal is always to be regulated and to be able to hold space for people so that they can experience their emotions. We can work through them and they can discharge so that we can actually get to the point where they can make solid agreements that they're not going to have to go back to court and they're not going to have to litigate. And so we go through the emotional process. We talk about the things. And for me, I do it maybe a little different than most mediators because I have such a background in the coaching nervous system regulation and particularly somatic coaching that I offer space. And my mediation includes all of the legal pieces of it, as well as meeting with folks both individually and together to do the nervous system work. And it's just been a really successful model. So it's something that I wished I had it 17 years ago. It would have changed my life significantly. And I know that I'm meant to be able to offer it for the people who are ready to divorce differently and do that. So that's a little bit about how I do it.
Party. And I know that you have like different modalities and things that you work with. Don't you use something called tuning forks? Can you give us some more details about what kind of stuff you do? Because it's really out of the box as far as divorce mediation goes. So I just think like it'd be so helpful for people to learn what do you do?
It does. That's great. Yes. Thank you for asking. So, I am a certified sound healer as well as a Reiki practitioner and a yoga teacher. So, I've got all the things. And I think that everything is vibration. I am very woo. I believe in this, although the science will back me up. And tuning forks are used to help us readjust. And they're a quick way to actually reset and take a pause. So I have been known when I was litigating, I would bring my tuning forks into court with me and help my clients. We would do breathing, tapping, and tuning fork, a little kind of glam up to prepare before we would go with the judge. And so when I came back to doing mediation now, I offer that. I'll do it for the clients, for myself, again, to get us all on the same page. I'm also a collaborative law coach. And so when I'm doing it in that process, we have two attorneys, myself, a financial neutral. Actually, Tom has been witness and participated in these. And I do it for the entire group because there's so much power in us doing this work together to co-regulate our nervous systems so that we can be prepared. And our sessions have been 4 or 5 hours. So it's important that we be able to do that to set that up. And again, they're not easy. We have some really difficult conversations, but we're much more prepared to hold the space so that we can do the work. So when I do individual sessions or a group session with my clients, one of the things we find is where are your triggers or what activates you? And so we come up with a plan when we're actually doing the mediation. Like I had a couple where he wanted to walk out. He would get when we would talk about a certain thing, he just wanted to leave. So we made a plan that he would say, I need to take a break. I will walk out. And he agreed to keep coming back to the room after he got that break. Whereas the other party, the wife, would disengage. She would completely shut down, dissociate, and just zone out. And so she agreed that when we were noticing that we could call her in and recognize that and take whatever break she needed or whatever she needed to do. We had a little plan that we developed so that she could stay engaged in the process. And so from the first meeting where it was like, woo, to the fourth meeting, we finally got an agreement that now we're working on as a team to be able to put into place. So I use my singing or my crystal. Last time I did a little sound bath for them with my crystal bowls and a few other things. I have chimes. Breath work is really important. The breathing, I cannot say enough about the power of breath, particularly when we do it together. So it's not, the things aren't complicated, but they, they're something that most of us aren't walking around. Most of the time, you don't see people or attorneys in particular walking around with tuning forks in court or wherever. One of the clients said to me, she's like, it's so cool because my space doubles as my yoga studio. And so I'll have all of my things there and she's it's just so cool. My mediator is also she's so woo, and she's given me like little sound baths, and we did breathwork sessions together. And yeah, and I believed it all could be blended. I believed this probably 2001 is when I found yoga. And I was in the midst of still a very young attorney then. I'm like, what if these two things could merge? And in 2025, I finally made it. I finally made it my reality.
So awesome. I love the model you've come up with. And I think there's a lot of benefits to this, even in the traditional like litigation space. One of my favorite stories I like to tell is that I had a client who was being deposed and she was really nervous. We were going to opposing counsel's office and we were going to spend all day there and they were going to ask her a lot of intrusive questions. And she was just so nervous. She was physically shaking. And in my bag, I carry a selenite stick, which is like a crystal
Mm.
stick. And so I gave it to her and I was like, why don't you hold this in your hand under the table? And if you're getting a little bit nervous, I was like, it feels good. Just hold it and hopefully it'll help you stay more grounded. And literally, she killed that deposition. She did such a good job. And she was sitting next to me, and I could see her rubbing that selenite stick throughout the entire day. And I let her keep it afterwards because I was like, obviously, it's meant for you. But even things like that, like little tips and tricks, I think integrating it into the divorce process, like Lisa said, like at the beginning, a lot of this can help us just in our daily lives. But in a heightened situation like divorce, I feel like they can be commingled so well. So,
My favorite one I have clients do is there's an acupressure point right here it's very powerful. You can just give yourself a little press. So especially when we were standing in front of judges, when I was going to court, I would have them just be able to lightly do that. They can have their hands underneath. Usually, sometimes the security guards come around, they would say that this was okay. And they just gently do that and breathe. And especially for people when we get really nervous and they could either do it while they're sitting or waiting, but usually when they were up in front, like sometimes we go into that disassociation and it helped them stay present and be able to be part of the process. So yeah, I love all the little tips. Tapping is another one I use all the time. You'll see my clients in court tapping, like with whatever there is they're saying. It's very powerful.
Thank you. And it is so powerful. And these small tips and tools that you can just do with an acupressure point can literally change the entire course of your case. And with that can change the entire course of your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, or should we bring in Tom to talk about
Well, I have questions.
Okay.
I want to bring Tom in because we have to talk about the money, right?
Right.
I got to hear how Lisa and Jolie work together. I would love to hear, Lisa, how you work with couples or an individual when they're in mediation, and how do you support them under those circumstances?
Or people individually. I don't actually work with couples, but I work with many people going through mediation, helping them make the decisions, keeping them grounded. And maybe we're working on a parenting plan. Helping them go through it step by step if they're not able to. 'Cause sometimes it's really hard, especially when it comes to the parenting plan and your kids. And as Julie was saying, not knowing that you're not going to be with them every single day of the week anymore. So working through the grief of that, working through what it looks like to do on the other days of the week when they're not with you so that you're comfortable with negotiating a parenting plan. Working with them to keep them grounded, to do all their financial paperwork. But sometimes just sitting on a call with them while they do it and talking to them about nothing. Whatever's going on in the world, the weather, I don't know, some weird thing that happened to me, whatever, just staying on a call live with them so they feel like they have somebody in the room supporting them. I often go to live mediations with clients. I was at one last week that ended up being 2 full days long because the clients, they know the other parties there. They're not always in the same room. The mediator's going back and forth in the situations I work in because there is typically coercive control or domestic abuse. Just sitting there with them because they know that the other parties in the other room, they know their attorneys in the other room, and the attorney for their attorney, their counsel is so focused on the divorce, on the logistics, on the strategic plan that they don't have the capacity to also support the client in that way. I have a vagus nerve stimulator I bring. That's really helpful. We do breath work while we're in there. We breathe. And also just having another person in the room with them when the mediator's going back and forth, when the client's asking questions to help with strategy, to help with all the things that pop up in the last minute, helping in the coercive control space, especially. And typically, I often work with women. The other side will come in and say, okay, he's going to sell the house then. This is just an example that happened the other day. We got the finances pretty much settled, and then the husband, because he didn't want to give this woman a dime, and he came in there thinking he was going to give her just a few $1,000s, and it was a huge settlement. So he said he was going to sell the house, so the daughter had to change schools. And you just watch this poor mom. You can just see her nervous system, her body language. So I said, okay, let's do it. Let's sell the house. Knowing in that moment, and I could also see the other side through where I was sitting through the window, and I could see his body language. So I knew he was just trying to threaten her. So just having someone there also be like the voice of reason to watch everyone else's body and nervous system to say, he's just doing that to be a jerk. He's being a bully. So let's call this ding dong on his bluff and get the settlement that you are due and that you deserve and get out of here.
Yeah. So that goes to also the communication piece and how helping your clients have the right words or how to phrase things to keep things more neutral, especially if you're in an environment where there is coercive control or narcissistic abuse.
Absolutely. Helping them keep, and maybe like sometimes they can't communicate. You've been in a situation for years like that. Sometimes you can't find your voice. So in that moment, going into these, we've talked extensively about what they want, what they need. So just allowing like them to maybe not use their voice in that moment and being their voice for them when they can't be their own voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And if someone is working with a therapist, they can still work with a divorce coach, right? Because you're forward thinking and the therapist is helping work through emotions and traumas from the past.
Absolutely. I highly recommend working with both. As a former therapist, I do a lot of brain spotting, which is a lot like EMDR, which can go into your past and your past trauma. But I'm very divorce focused and very what's going on in your life focused. And if we have to work on some of the other stuff, that's absolutely okay too. But I don't think anyone can ever have enough people supporting them through a time like this. The more, the better.
Yeah, I love it. All right. There is nothing more emotional than money. So, Mr. Thomas, money in the
Thanks.
house. Boy, you got both tonight. You like Lisa to stay on with you or?
Yeah, whoever wants to stay on is great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, I know they talked a lot about emotional regulation. I will say it's a sight to behold to watch Marty in mediation with two hard-nosed lawyers, professionals, high net worth, having her regulate their emotions so we can be productive and move forward efficiently. Everyone here on this call is committed to getting you through your divorce cost effectively and efficiently. And when emotions get in the way, that's going to slow things down. That's going to make things expensive. So a couple of keywords that I want to focus on tonight to help you lower your stress and get through the process more efficiently and for a better outcome is team, number one, and thinking sustainability. Getting yourself out of the moment and thinking where you want to be 5 years from now. First of all, just as an exercise, just as a little bit of stress for a second. If you think about life insurance, 401k division, what you're going to do for healthcare, your social security, what are you going to do with your will? How are you going to divide up the pension, the mortgage, refinance? Are you stressed yet? This is just a fraction of all the financial considerations that you're going to have to think about. And no one person can handle that on their own without building a proper team to help them through that. So that's what we're here for. And you want to build this team early in the process, not just when you're going into court or at the last minute, because this team can help you plan out a sustainable solution. So, for example, you could come up with a great divorce proposal and process and agreement where someone keeps a house and then they refinance it, and then you find out later they're not eligible to refinance. So that's why you need to talk, for example, with a mortgage person ahead of time. And Maggie Eck, our mortgage person on this team, she could not be with us tonight, unfortunately. She's got a family issue to take care of. But someone like Maggie and myself would collaborate ahead of time to say, is that proposal with the house or the mortgage, is that feasible? Do you have the finances to do that? What's that going to look like? What's that cost going to look like? The cost of maintaining that house? How does that fit in with the rest of your budget? This kind of planning with real estate professionals, mortgage people, of course, the people on this call, potentially insurance people, your accountants. A lot of these people, you don't have to pay them a ton of money up front. Some of them get paid when you do the transaction. You need to be talking to those people early in the game. And I'm available to help quarterback that too, if you need any introductions in that area. But building the team is really important. You can't do it all yourself. It's not possible. It takes a village to get you through a divorce efficiently. Thinking about one of the big touch points, of course, that stress people out is thinking about the kid and the child support, but the home is a really important area of stress. And I'm going to take over Maggie's role for a second here, talking about the home. As I said, it is important to think about the home as a financial asset. It's very easy to get caught up in the emotions. Like when I separated and moved my house, I was tied up on the fact, hey, I'll build that driveway. I dug that hole. I built that fence. You put a lot into it. You made it a home. You've made it cozy. But you also got to think about it as a financial asset too. A home at the end of the day is where there's love and security. And if you take on a home that's going to be too expensive for you to maintain and you have to work 2 jobs, you can't give your kids and your family and your friends the attention that they deserve. So let's think and plan out what that looks like, maintaining the house. What you're going to give up for that? Are you going to give up all your assets? Are you going to run into a liquidity issue 3 years from now, 4 years from now, and then ultimately may not be able to maintain the home at that point? What makes sense is a good balance of assets between your real estate, your 401k, etc. What does renting look like? Is that going to be more cost effective? Will downsizing work for you? Planning that all out is important. And again, if you are going to keep the house, let's look at what that looks like, getting a pre-approval, what that's going to cost you in terms of interest rate. Are you going to qualify with your alimony, your other sources of income, etc.? Let's get that game plan in order. So that's one area where you need to plan and pull in the professionals ahead of time. And again, the second key word for me tonight is sustainability. A lot of people get really caught up in the point in time and the emotions of divorce, like it's this battle and it's this one-off transaction and who gets what. And you can get really tied up in that and fail to think about what is your life going to look like 5 years from now. Okay, you might win the battle, get the assets you want, but unless you've done a proper financial plan with a professional, it's going to be very hard to figure out what things look like 5 years from now. How much extra cash flow are you going to have? Is there a gap there where you might need to go do a little bit of part-time work on the side, etc.? Will you be able to retire when you want to retire? Financial professionals and planners such as myself, we have the software to help you answer those questions. Think about the longer term. Okay, you win the battle, you get the assets you want, but is that going to be sustainable? Can you maintain the cost of that roof that needs to be broken, fixed on the house. Who's going to do the snow removal, etc.? Who's going to maintain the house, keep it clean? What is that going to cost? CDFAs like myself, we'll work on the budget, doing a proper budget. If you don't have a real proper idea, as I've seen a couple of times recently, of your budget, it's really hard to plan for the longer term. And then if you go late in the game in the divorce and you realize, wait, hold on, my budget is a lot more than I thought it was. I'm not going to be able to afford this. Then you've got to go back to square one again, pay your legal team all over again because you've come up with half a plan that you realize you can't afford. So again, thinking sustainability all the way is really important, not just caught up in the moment in time and the battle. And that takes some regulation of emotions that these professionals can really help with. Once you've got your emotions and you've got the facts, the numbers down in front of you, then you can really calmly proceed to a longer term solution that's going to work for you and for your family, so you don't run yourself into a bind 4 or 5 years from now. Again, team and sustainability would be my 2 keywords for tonight. I'll send it back to the regulator if you guys want to chat about any questions you've seen or anything that came across or anything that came up for you from what I just said there, Mandy.
Yeah, no, I think that it's great. And I think that, all too often in my concierge calls, people will be so stuck in the idea that they have to keep the house. As painful as a divorce can be, it's an event in your life. And what you do during your divorce to set yourself up for success in life after divorce is really what matters. And kids need a loving home and happy, healthy parents, but they don't have to necessarily be in that home if that's not going to be what is in the best interest of your long-term financial health. And how do you help people work through the emotions of letting the possibility of letting the house go so that they
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think your kids are going to value time with you more than just what house they're in. And if you're stressed and not present because you're so stressed about money, or you're working that second job to maintain that house, they're going to look out back at that. They would much rather time with you than you out there hustling, trying to maintain that expensive house.
And then, what happens? You end up getting resentful because you're overworked and trying to maintain a lifestyle that was once maintained with possibly 2 incomes.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mandy.
No, I was just going to say that I think that it's really important that the work you and Maggie do is really in tandem, and that together you guys create strategy.
There's going to be an aspect of it too, potentially, for some people that, your lifestyle, your outward lifestyle isn't going to look the same as it used to. If you're someone that's trying to keep up with the Joneses and keep an appearance, that's really hard to do now that you've got 2 houses to maintain. So that might be something you need to let go of, that persona that you've presented to other people. One of the most expensive things in life, in my opinion, is trying to keep up with the Joneses and look like you're living how you used to. At the end of the day, who cares what other people think? It's your family and taking care of your family.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a couple of questions that have just recently come in. One is, what if you have an agreeable settlement and your ex decides to retire? Can they stop paying alimony when they want to?
Alimony is determined by the state that you're in. So I'm just going to speak to Massachusetts right now. And in Massachusetts, we have an alimony statute, and the length that alimony can be paid is dependent upon how long the marriage is for general term alimony. The gist is, the longer the marriage, the longer that the duration for alimony payments can be. If you have a long-term marriage that's over 20 years, then alimony can be unlimited in duration, but there's an asterisk there because that is determined until a payor reaches full Social Security retirement age. So most people, that number is age 67. So if if your ex reaches age 67, then they filed a modification to terminate their alimony, then they would likely be successful unless there were extenuating circumstances to justify going beyond that age. If they decide to retire early just because they want to, so let's say they retire at 62 or 63, then that becomes a little bit more murky. And if they filed a modification, the court still could require them to pay alimony if it's ordered in different situations. But if you are working on a settlement and then your ex just decides to retire, I think that's pretty crappy in my opinion. It sounds like he's trying to get out of paying alimony and reneging on that agreement. And if you have an attorney or if you're representing yourself, you could potentially make an argument that income should be imputed to him because I'm assuming he's probably still capable of working. It's a long answer, but that's my short version of it. Do you have anything else to add, Marty?
No, I think you got it. It depends, but yeah, I think you covered all the bases on that one.
Jolie, how would you protect against what if they raise the retirement age in the future? Can you lock that in now? What if Social Security runs low on money as it's projected to, and they raise the retirement age to 69 instead of 67?
Yes. So that depends on if your alimony provision is modifiable in the future, or if you decide to have it's called survive the divorce judgment, meaning it's non-modifiable in the future. So if you have a modifiable agreement and then the age raises to 69, then potentially the person who's paying could go back and say, hey, when I negotiated this, it was only 67 and I retired at 67, dependent upon that, and they might have an argument. But if your divorce agreement says that I'm just using he in this situation because that's the question. If he's going to pay through age 67 and your alimony provision is non-modifiable, and then retirement age gets raised after that, your agreement is until age 67 and can't be changed. So you're stuck with that. So that's one thing that you really want to consult with an attorney about is what parts of your divorce judgment are going to be modifiable in the future and which ones are not going to be modifiable in the future.
So thank you.
We have a question about what is the penalty for taking funds from a 401k? Can you do multiple disbursements? What's recommended if you need the funds?
Yeah, I can take that one. So if you're under 59 and a half and you don't do it the right way, you're taking funds from a 401k, you can do it pursuant to a divorce. When you're dividing up the 401k, you're allowed, because of the divorce, to take money from that 401k without paying that 10% penalty for being under 59 and a half. As long as you do it before that money is subsequently moved into, let's say, an IRA or rolled over. So you want to take it as part of the division of the 401k just after it's moved into your name rather than moved to another custodian or elsewhere. So you should probably work with a financial planner on that, or a CDFA in particular is familiar with that situation to make sure you do that right. You are going to pay ordinary income taxes on disbursements from a 401k, regardless of whether it happened in a divorce or not in a divorce, regardless of whether you're under 59 and a half or over 59 and a half. Do look up your ordinary income tax rates. It's available online to see what tax bracket you're in, because that's the tax you're going to pay on that 401k distribution. But it is important to think about liquidity, and is taking money from the 401k the better way? It's going to be cheaper than taking money, racking up a 20% credit card, for example, but maybe there are cheaper ways of doing it. Maybe dipping into HELOC. That's where you talk to a financial professional and think about your best sources of liquidity and the least expensive ways of tapping into those funds. And again, sustainability, thinking forward, am I going to run into a shortfall in 3 or 4 years when the kids go off to college? And how do I plan for that event where I'm going to need access to funds?
I just want to note something, Mandy, that because this question says what's recommended if you need funds. So I'm assuming that this person wants to withdraw from their 401k while the divorce is still pending. And I would caution against that. And advise them to speak to an attorney because once a divorce is filed, there's certain automatic restraining orders on finances that go into effect, and you're not supposed to deplete marital funds, which 401k assets are considered marital funds. So I would just add that caution to speak to an attorney and make sure that this is something you're able to do. If the 401k is being divided in the divorce, like Tom mentioned, then it can be divided without penalty. But I'm just concerned that this is about during the divorce. So
Yeah.
to add that little note.
Yeah, no,
Well, and
that's a
one
really
question
good
there.
point.
Yeah, very good point. And you can do multiple disbursements, but again, make sure you plan that out with a planner and do it the right way.
Mm.
It
Before
doesn't
we
have to, you don't have to take the whole thing.
Before we get into the next legal question, I do want a question that was submitted in advance for Lisa. Any special emotional considerations for a senior male that's divorcing and again, dealing with the fear of being alone and adjusting to the new normal?
I think that could be a consideration, honestly, for anybody, right? Going through a
Mhm.
divorce, regardless of your age or your gender. But for a senior man, I think generationally, there's a lot, even more for a senior man, of your identity tied into that, depending on the age and the generation and what the marriage was like. Were you like a traditional, like you went to work every day, possibly before you retired, and the wife stayed home? There's a lot of gender roles there and a lot of identity there. And maybe sitting with that and noticing what comes up there, what type of grief is coming on. Is it a grief of the family? Is it a grief of your role? Is it a grief of like just a huge change in a life event and not knowing where you go now or what you do now? There's so many emotional considerations there, but like I always say, letting yourself sit with that grief, letting yourself sit with that emotion and noticing what it feels like, talking to a therapist, a coach, having someone that can really help walk you through those emotions. That's a big change and a big transition in your life at any time, but especially if it's been a really long-term marriage. And I'm guessing maybe this could come around the time or after retirement. So there's a lot of change and a lot of transition and happening there.
Yeah. And I think also trying to find your joy again. What are some of the things, the hobbies, the things that you wanted to do? And there's so many different, whether it be meetup or other groups where you can try to find other people that enjoy the same activity.
Like just think about like when you were working and married and had children, if this person had children, all the times that you wish you had time to do things you wanted to do
Mm,
that you never could find time to do. Allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to go do those now and maybe allowing yourself to do something totally different that you never thought of, allowing yourself to be maybe a very different person than you were then and letting yourself, meeting yourself where you are now.
yeah.
Who you are now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would say it could be look at it as a very positive opportunity. And your next relationship might be one where there's no expectations. Oh, we're going to settle down, have a family or this or that. A lot of that baggage is gone. You're just in it for the fun of it. So be
Yeah.
very positive time as well.
Yeah. I was looking at a couple other questions. I'm just looking to see if they were actually with us. And then just, I guess, like standard language that you could have for yourself to help regulate if standard language to keep in your back pocket to help de escalate, not regulate. Sorry. My eyes are getting tired.
I get it. What I will often say standard language you can do, if you can just even drop into a little bit of a quiet moment, close your eyes or quiet your mind and just say to yourself, in this moment, I'm safe. In this moment, I'm okay. In this moment, I am enough. Because a lot of our triggers that come in from fear of not being safe, from a core wound of not being enough, not being okay. And really just sitting with yourself in your nervous system and telling you that and noticing what trigger is coming in. What just happened? Is it making me feel fear? Is it making me feel unsafe? Is it making me feel not enough? And just in that moment, telling yourself, I am enough. I am safe. Even if you need to write it down on a piece of paper and say, in this moment, I am safe because I am in this room on this Zoom call with a roof over my head, sitting in a chair. There is no immediate danger to me in this moment, and letting you and your nervous system and your subconscious, like your soul, just take in that moment and know that you're safe.
Thank you. All right. So we did have another legal question that came in here in the Q&A. How is alimony calculated if both spouses make within 30,000 of each other? Is that something that can be waived in Massachusetts 15-year marriage?
So alimony isn't automatically ordered by the court. There needs to be a demonstrated need that of the recipient that they are in need of financial support. And the payor also has to have a demonstrated ability in order to pay support. So there's a lot of considerations that go into that. But if both parties are in agreement to waive alimony, the court will usually respect that.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. And then this is definitely a depends, right? After the papers are signed, how long do the emotions or the roller coaster of emotions last for? I've been divorced 18 years and I am happily remarried and I still have moments of sadness.
Exactly. I think that it depends on what happened in the marriage, how it ended, but a lot of it depends on what you're doing throughout the divorce to help yourself process these emotions. Nobody wants to sit with the yucky feeling emotions and the hard stuff and the grief. But if you can allow yourself to sit in those emotions and sit in the uncomfortable and work with somebody to help you process them, their process, you're not carrying them into the next part of your life, into the next relationship, because I would say I feel the opposite. I got divorced 15 years ago, and I was pretty happy to be rid of him. I'm not gonna lie. But and I'm still very happy to be rid of him. But I forget he exists. I don't look back. I am so thankful every day that this person is not in my life or my children's life. So I think it all depends. And it depends on so many factors, but I can promise you that you can move past it. You can find joy again, you can find happiness again. There's so many amazing people out there if you do want to be in another relationship. There's so many benefits of spending some time alone. You get to choose now. You get to rewrite your story, you get to rewrite your life, and you get to choose which direction you go.
I gave myself a year, a gift of being single for a year after my divorce, and it was the best thing that I did for myself.
It is really nice.
Yeah. I learned that I like to run and that I like to do other things, and
Yes.
I got a dog, and it was great.
Yeah. It's amazing to just focus on yourself and your kids if you have kids and not, I don't know, pick up anyone else's mess or dude, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. You guys don't need me to tell you that. But just to focus on yourself for a little bit after going through this
Yeah.
rest of the divorce, amazing.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts or words of wisdom, gang, before we say goodnight?
We're just gonna add real quickly about the words of what to remind yourself of. There's two phrases that I often am repeating to my clients, so I think they're worth sharing here. The first is just because the other side may say something in court or in paperwork that they file with court doesn't make it true. The judge takes everything with a grain of salt, and they're the judge. They are the ones who determine credibility. It can be really hard for people and emotionally triggering to see straight up lies said and written about them, but the judge, they don't take everything at face value. So that's the first one. And then the second one is just because your ex is asking for something doesn't mean they're going to get it. And that one is so crucial because people and attorneys, they ask for unreasonable things all the time. And it can be, again, very scary to see that in black and white or asked for in court. But as long as you consult with your attorney, they should be giving you good advice and realistic expectations. Some people ask for the moon, and it doesn't mean that they're going to get it. So I just wanted to share those.
Thank you, Chelsea. Anyone else?
I think like one of my last thoughts, and it really goes back to what Tom was saying, is having a team around you. I often see so many people that they come for mediation because they want to spend less money, and divorce can be really expensive. I think that it's an important to consider that, but also you want to do it right. And if I see a lot of people like trying to say, I don't want a financial advisor, I don't need to hire a coach, or don't want to pay for my quad, or whatever it is, at the end, it can be much more expensive. And again, if you're not, emotions drive so much and they can make it even that much more complicated. So if you can have a team, and it might feel a little bit more of an investment at the front end, but trust me, at the back end, it is going to be so worth it to be able to have the right team and the right people, and people who are skilled and can help guide you through it and hold that space for you. It at the end, it becomes much more affordable, especially if cost is concerning. The emotions are expensive in the divorce process.
Yeah, that's actually how Vesta got founded. Deanna Coyle, one of our co-founders, she was the brainchild behind Vesta. She used her attorney for everything. She has a financial background. She used her attorney to fill out her financial disclosures. She used her attorney as her therapist for guidance for her house, not using the right. And she loved her attorney. She was a great ally, but using the right tools for the job. Yeah. Anything for you, Tom?
No, that's it. Just, yeah, building the team, thinking sustainability. As Marty said, if you do it right, do it once, you don't want to be back 2 or 3 years from now spending more legal fees because you left a loophole out there, or you didn't run yourself into a difficult situation because you didn't plan it out properly with the right team. Save yourself, make the investment up front and save yourself some money over the long term.
Awesome. Anything for you, Lisa?
Allow yourself to have emotions. I know I keep saying it. If I were
Mm.
human beings, we're going to be mad. We're going to be sad. We're going to be scared. We're going to be overwhelmed. It's human. So a lot of times I think we beat ourselves up for having emotions. A lot of times we say, oh, I should do that. That is what I should do this. I should do that. So I would just invite everyone on this call, every time you hear yourself saying, I should in the next week, change the word to could. I could do this. I could do that. Try to remove should from the vocabulary just for a week and see what happens and see how your life changes.
I love that. I'm going to work on that myself. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. This session has been recorded, so you will get a recording in the next couple of days. And please grab the links that were put in the chat if you're able. You'll also receive a document that has everyone's contact information as well. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event.